What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the NFL First Look lineup building preview show here on RotoGrinders. We've got the second week of the NFL playoffs on tap here this week, the divisional round, and we've got some interesting matchups on tap. Was reading something last night about how all 8 quarterbacks that are in play here in the divisional round are still in their 20s. So pretty incredible, the young quarterback talent that we have in the NFL. Unfortunately for my Ravens, Lamar Jackson is not one of them that's still around for this round of the playoffs, but the Ravens put up a reasonable fight last week. So in any case, should be some interesting games this weekend. We've got 2 games here on Saturday. We've got 2 on Sunday. If you're looking for the primary Draftkings slate with the 4-game breakdown, we did tape and post a video of that yesterday. So you can check out that video on the YouTube archives on the YouTube channel. For this specific show, we're going to focus on just the 2 Saturday games, which is the main slate over on Fanduel. So I figure we'll use that kind of as our primary breakdown starting point here with the Fanduel slate. I am Justin Van Zuden, STL Cardinals 84. I've got Tim Buell alongside. Tim, how you doing this weekend?
I'm doing well, Justin. I'm excited to do the show with you. We're getting right down to it. It's almost the end of this football season. Before you know it, we'll be talking about the Masters and talking about MLB. But for right now, it's still playoff time, and we still got these games this weekend. I think are going to be fantastic, and especially from a DFS standpoint. So I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, should be some really good games. Of course, I am excited for that Masters and baseball time frame. That fits my alley pretty well, but
Yeah.
don't mind the football action as well, and should be some good games this weekend. Maybe a little bit more buzz on the around the Sunday games, but we do have Jacksonville, Kansas City this weekend. Of course, incredible comeback by the Jags last week. Pour one out for the person that put the $1.4 million bet on the Chargers money line when they were ahead 27-0. That made its way around the social media buzz this week. But the Jaguars, big comeback. They move on to face the Chiefs, and nobody expects them to win this game, so they're playing with house money, if you will, in this one. And then we've got the Giants and the Eagles in the nightcap. Both home teams favored by about a touchdown, 7-8 points in these games. You think we're going to see the favorites roll this week? I mean, last week it was some scares. Obviously, the Bills, surprising close game there with Miami. Baltimore hung with Cincinnati. You think the favorites get on track and hold serve this week, or do you think we'll see some competitive games here today?
So my money's going on the Eagles to dominate this game against the Giants. I think it's a really, really bad matchup for the Giants. So I actually think the Eagles are going to cover pretty easily. And then with the first game on tap with the Chiefs and the Jags, I actually like the Jags getting the points. I think that game's going to be a lot of back and forth. I think the Chiefs offense is obviously amazing, but their defense, I think, is a little bit overrated, and I think Jacksonville is going to be able to put up some points against them. So I'm going to take the Eagles to cover, and I'm going to take the Jags to cover. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, the Chiefs defense, I mean, it just isn't that good. It gets masked by the fact that they put up a bunch of points, but
Right.
You remember one of the last times that the Chiefs were a huge favorite. I mean, they couldn't stop the Texans a month or so ago in that game, and and the Jags obviously aren't the Texans. So, and we know Jacksonville can put up some points. So I do agree on the back and forth in that game. I think we're pretty much in agreement in thinking that the Jags keep that one competitive. I like the Eagles as well. Maybe not quite as much conviction as you on them controlling that game, but obviously I think they'll win. I'd probably stay away from that one in terms of betting the points one way or the other. Hopefully we get a couple of competitive games today, but let's talk about kind of our DFS lineup building. And again, we'll focus on FanDuel here to start with this being kind of their main Saturday slate, and DraftKings kind of offering the 4 games. If you're just joining us, just getting into this video, again, we have a separate video posted already for that 4-game slate. So let's talk quarterbacks with these 2 Saturday games. Obviously, all 4 of them have shown some ceiling at times. Mahomes and Hurts in their own pricing tier above Trevor Lawrence and Daniel Jones, but you do get a pretty reasonable discount with the 2 quarterbacks on the 2 underdog teams, which should feature, a lot of passing game script for them. So Do you spend up or do you save at quarterback today?
I think it depends on the size of the contest that you're playing. If I'm playing like a small dollar, like high entry contest, I think I'm going to play Trevor Lawrence today. We already talked about how we think that game's going to be kind of high scoring with Lawrence always playing from behind. So I think this game script is going to be perfect for him. If I'm playing more of like cash optimal type contest, then I think I'm going to go with Patrick Mahomes. Either way, I want exposure to the Jacksonville Kansas City game. I think that's going to be the highest scoring game on this 2-game slate, and that's where I want to get all my where I can. I want to get exposure to that game. Obviously, Jalen Hurts is a fine play. I'm very, very, very bearish on Daniel Jones. I don't have any kind of faith in him. I know he's got a rushing floor, but at 23% ownership, I'd much rather get to 12% on Trevor Lawrence by a mile. So I'm out on Daniel Jones. I'm high on Lawrence, and then Mahomes for more like cash game single entry type format.
So you will see if you look at the tags in lineup HQ that are shown on the screen share. I do have Daniel Jones tagged, but part of that is because earlier in the week when I did that, we had Daniel Jones at about 12% ownership here. Now he's up to 23. So, if you want to go underweight in GPPs, obviously I get the logic behind that. I get sucked in by the rushing floor. And so, I'll probably match that ownership on Fanduel. I do have more interest in Jones on Draftkings, where he is one of the lowest owned quarterbacks on the full 4-game slate. You can see we've got him at 10% ownership there, and he's only 5,800. So I do like Daniel Jones a little bit better on Draftkings, but I have some of them on FanDuel as well, just in the hopes, if the Giants fall way behind, I think it's some leverage away from Barkley as well, because Barkley's going to be pretty chalky. In the event that, the Giants are behind by 2 scores, maybe Daniel Jones is asked to do a little bit more. So I'm a little higher on Jones than Tim, but, get the logic behind potentially going underweight in GPPs, and Lawrence at the lowest ownership on this FanDuel slate, I do think is interesting as well. I prefer the build with the cheaper quarterbacks today. I think that discount helps you to pay up at other spots. So Jones and Lawrence will be the 2 guys that I'm on a little bit more in GPPs. And you can see, if we do a sample build here just with Lawrence, we can come back and see how that kind of helps you build out the rest of your lineup from a salary perspective. All right, let's go to running back here. We've got Barkley at 8,500 on FanDuel, and then you've kind of got this mid-range that's chock full of guys that are around the same price: Sanders, McKinnon, Etienne, Pacheco. Tim and I have both died on the sword with Jerick McKinnon multiple times now. And now on FanDuel, McKinnon is more expensive than Pacheco, which just seems weird in the half-point PPR format. But we'll see if we can fall on that sword maybe a 4th time. But what are your thoughts on these running backs here? Interesting with, the potential negative game script with Barkley, with McKinnon being expensive. Etienne feels pretty safe, but, they're underdogs. So what do we do here?
Yeah, running back is very, very challenging this week. I think whether you're playing the 2-game slate, the 4-game slate, whatever slate you're playing, I think this week is a 2 running back week, just from a construction standpoint. That's kind of just my thoughts on it. I don't have a lot of faith in any of these running backs. I think you could poke some very, very serious holes in all of them. I think Saquon could end up being over-owned in this matchup, where I think that Philadelphia really controls the possession. So I don't know if I want to pay up 8,500 for 50% owned Saquon Barkley. To be honest with you, Miles Sanders is my favorite, and that feels awful to say because it's Miles Sanders, and who knows how efficient he's going to be and how many touches he gets. But I think that he's honestly my favorite. And then the other weird one is Travis Etienne. This is going to be a really, really bad script for him. If he gets 20 rushes for 90 yards and 1 reception, that's not going to be enough. So it's very, very difficult running back this week. I think I'm going to just do 2 running backs in my single entry and in my GBP teams and hope that I land on it correctly. But I think right now I'm going to fade Saquon. I think it's going to be I'm pretty sure I'm going to be having Miles Sanders, and then it's either going to be McKinnon or Etienne.
Yeah, we're in agreement here on Sanders. You know, he wasn't really needed in the regular season finale when these teams played. The Eagles won that game comfortably. They needed to win to clinch the one seed in that game, but the Giants weren't playing for anything. They didn't play any of their starters, so you know they were able to take it easy on Sanders. So take those numbers in the regular season finale with a grain of salt. The previous meeting in the regular season between these teams, he did have 17 carries for 144 yards and 2 touchdowns. So that was one of his best games of the year. So in agreement on Sanders, underweight on Barkley simply with the potential game flow and the price. Underweight on McKinnon just because I'm stubborn and I refuse to pay $7K. I'm not going to full fade him because that's the way they've been utilizing him in the past game is probably just asking for disaster, but not a guy I'm going to play with conviction by any means. So the one I feel the best about is Sanders. Etienne is fine. But with you, I think it's a 2 running back slate. I like Sanders. I'll mix and match the others, and I just don't want this to be the position that kills me today. Is there anybody that you would take maybe if you 100 lineups, a GPP stab on a Gainwell or a Boston Scott or a Hasty or anybody you would even sprinkle in on if you're building, you know, a bunch of lineups in a lower dollar contest?
I was just gonna say Gainwell. That would be probably just about it. I wouldn't want to go any lower than that.
Yeah, I don't think you need to get too cute here. Unlikely to be a ton of, you know, surprising high scores at the position in the absence of, you know, a fluke couple of touchdowns or something like that. So, all right, let's move to receiver where this is a slate. There's not a ton of elite spends at receiver. You know, we've got guys that are playing tomorrow. We've got guys like Chase and Diggs on the slate for Sunday. And of course, if you're playing the 4-game slate for the full weekend, you will probably lean a little bit of your exposure towards those Sunday games, particularly for your spend ups at this position. But just with the 2 games on Saturday, not a ton to spend at the position. AJ Brown is your one kind of 8K plus receiver on FanDuel. The Jacksonville guys, given that game script, will be popular. And Kirk and Zay Jones combined for 27 targets last week, I believe, on 47 pass attempts from Trevor Lawrence. So you know where the targets are going in that Jacksonville offense. But you can see in our RotoGrinders projections here, not a ton of high smash percentages, not a ton of good RG values, just a lot of red all across the board in these wide receiver projections. But everybody's got the same deck of cards. And again, we don't love the running backs, so you got to have a flex too. So you got to pluck out some wide receivers from this group. Who are you feeling best about?
I love Zay Jones. I know everybody does in Lineup HQ. Everybody has him tagged pretty much. He is by far my favorite play on both FanDuel and DK. He's just going to get so many targets. Jones and Kirk, but Jones is less expensive of the two. He's going to be lower owned. So Zay Jones is definitely my favorite. And then I think that it's tough because I really like AJ Brown, but he might just have to be like reserved for maybe like a showdown slate or the 4-game slate on DK or something like that because he's really, really expensive on FanDuel. And FanDuel's, only half point PPR, so it's a little bit harder to get to AJ Brown, but I do really, really like him this week. But yeah, Jones and Kirk would be my 1A, 1B scenario, and then kind of like maybe even like a Marvin Jones, something like that. These Jaguar receivers to me are like the best plays on the board.
Yeah, and I think to me, let's go with Zay Jones here, and even if you play Jones and Kirk together in a build, it's probably going to come down to right with 4 spots left. Let me let's just put a defense in there. Let's put the Eagles in there for now. We've got 6,400 per spot. So if I go with AJ Brown and Travis Kelce, I've only got $3,000 for my flex. That's obviously not going to work. So it's going to come down to one of the two. It's going to come down to whether or not you want to play AJ Brown or whether you want to play Travis Kelce at tight end. And I presume, based on your comments just a minute ago, that you would lean towards Kelce being the preferred spend of the two if you're choosing between Brown and Kelce.
Yeah, definitely. That's why it's kind of hard. It's kind of like it's really, really hard to get to AJ Brown on FanDuel.
Yeah. So if you get Kelsey in there, obviously we won't finish out the whole build, but you've got 5,600 for your final two spots, and you get another kind of cheapish receiver in there, and it makes it work. So tough to fit AJ Brown and Kelsey in the same lineup is essentially the point that we're looking at here on FanDuel. So any other thoughts on these cheaper receivers? Obviously, I know you're not super high on the Giants, but Slayton's pretty cheap. Tony is a guy that's getting some love in GPP builds. I just think with the bye week, and you know that Andy Reid has some gadget stuff worked up for Tony, some big plays in that offense. I think he's great for tournaments today. Your thoughts on any of these other kind of cheap guys outside of the Zay Jones chalk?
You took the words right out of my mouth about Kadarius Toney. Like, you know that Andy Reid's gonna be drawing up plays for him in the red zone. So I mean, on FanDuel, he's a really, really good play at 5,800.
Anybody else? Marvin Jones,
Yeah,
Watkins.
I love anybody for Jacksonville. So I mean, I love to get to Marvin Jones. I'm not crazy about that ownership, but at 20%, that's not horrible. So yeah. I do like Marvin Jones this week.
All right, tight ends. I mean, obviously Kelsey is the top play. How do you plan to split out your ownership? I mean, all four of these teams do have a clear tight end one, so it's not as disastrous as you would normally think on a 2-game slate. But for those that might be looking to get away from Kelsey, or they want to play AJ Brown instead, you prefer Goddard or Ingram or Bellinger? Who would be your second choice?
If you don't have the money for Kelsey, I would 100% play Evan Ingram. Like, he's just going to be absolute target monster in this game. So I love anybody for Jacksonville, and then also Daniel Bellinger would be another GPP pivot for me. And then Noah Gray. Don't forget about Noah Gray. I think he's a good pivot also.
Yes, Noah Gray will be the ultimate Twitter meltdown play of the day if he snags a couple touchdowns away from Kelsey. That'd be fun. I'll have plenty of Kelsey, but that'd be fun to see just for the social media meltdowns that would happen, the fantasy football meltdowns, best ball meltdowns, DFS meltdowns, everything. Defense, the Eagles are grading out, obviously, as the highest scoring defense. You get a lot of variance here. The one defense that I am not playing as chalk is the Chiefs. That defense is not good, as we mentioned earlier. We know Jacksonville can score points. I mean, I know there's turnovers, and Lawrence threw, a bunch of picks last week, but that Kansas City defense, every time they've been chalked this year, they've busted. So I don't mind taking a shot, given the variance on one of the cheaper ones. But if you're playing the high-end defense, give me the Eagles over the Chiefs today.
Yeah, I would 100% prioritize the Eagles today. If you can't, I'd just go all the way down to the Giants. I wouldn't bother with that KC Jacksonville game. I think that game's going to go way over.
All right, let's go ahead and we can pivot over to DraftKings here. And again, mentioned it before, if you're looking for a breakdown of the full 4-game slate, we've already got a video posted for that, so you can check that out. I'll pivot this over. I think we've got a slate in here for Saturday only, and we'll pull that up on DraftKings just to take a quick peek at that before we wrap up this pre-game show here. All right, so DraftKings, a little less difference in the gaps in pricing in some spots, but quarterback you kind of still see a similar mix. Mahomes and Hurts on the high end, then about $1,600 before you get to the other two guys. Not going to be a real change there. We do have the full point PPR on DraftKings, though, and with Barkley and Etienne and McKinnon kind of being higher, better pass catchers, you see them with the higher price tags. And Miles Sanders, although he doesn't catch as many passes, he's a lot cheaper on DK as well, so he's still going to be popular there. Any differences in the way you'd approach the running backs on DK?
Not really. I still want to be underweight on Barkley, overweight on Sanders. I think that's my biggest take. I really like Miles Sanders this week.
Yeah, it becomes a little more difficult to do that full McKinnon fade on DK for sure with the full point PPR on DraftKings. So I'm going to pull up our live video here and see if we've got any questions. Oh, this is a good one. Big Hurt had asked a minute or so ago, can you use double tight ends on FanDuel? So would you be willing, with the wide receiver being relatively thin, running back being relatively thin, could you use, say, Kelsey and Goddard or Kelsey and Ingram together in a FanDuel build? People don't like doing that.
I absolutely love that this week. I think that's a really, really good idea.
Yeah, based on the way the tight end position has played out this year, that seems weird. Like tight end is terrible in fantasy, but on this slate, you've got 4 of the better pass catching tight ends. Like I mentioned earlier that Kirk and Zay Jones had 27 targets on Lawrence's 47 pass attempts last week, but Ingram had double digits as well. So those 3 guys combined for like 38, I believe, of the 47 targets. So no issues playing multiple Jacksonville pass catchers.
Jacksonville is so cheap on DK today for that 2-game slate. Like they're gonna be so high owned, but I think it's hard to get away from them. Really,
you look at Kirk is 6K. Zay Jones is 4,700.
Like he's gonna be the highest owned wide receiver on the slate, I would imagine. Even though we say that it's gonna be AJ Brown or Devonta Smith, but I think it's gonna be Zay Jones.
The Giants receivers are a little cheaper on DraftKings as well. Richie James is still really cheap. So, even if you're not in love with Daniel Jones, like getting Richie James in a build does help make the rest of that lineup work. And it is slightly easier to get that Kelsey and AJ Brown together on DraftKings if you go cheap with those other receiver spots. So food for thought on that. AO22 asked, who is your favorite fade on this slate?
Saquon Barkley.
I kind of agree with that. I just think, again, and I'm a little higher on Daniel Jones than most. So if Barkley doesn't have a great day, that will be good for me as well. Any other thoughts on this DraftKings build that might be different than FanDuel before we wrap it up here?
Not really. I love Noah Gray for tournaments quite a bit. So I think he's going to be a GPP winner for like a milli maker.
All right, sprinkle him into your builds for that social media meltdown if he goes off later. So with that should wrap it up. So we've got you covered here. We got the 4-game slate videotaped. We've got this 2-game slate video, and we'll be back with pre-lock shows before each of the games this afternoon for updates leading up until lock. Not a whole lot of questionable news or injury news that we got to keep an eye on. So should be pretty straightforward today. Should be a fun day of football. Got a 6-game NBA slate tonight as well with a ton of injury news that we're waiting on. So should be an entertaining day of DFS. And with that, we'll go ahead and put a bow on this video. Thanks to Tim for joining me. I'm Justin. Thanks to Steve for waking up early on a Saturday morning and producing behind the scenes for us as well. Good luck to all of you with all your lineups and your DFS sweats today. And we'll see you back here before the start of the first game, everybody. Have a good weekend.